All right, welcome everyone. Today is Wednesday, the 29th of July, 2026, and this is the SIG Cloud Provider office hours. We are a sub-project at Kubernetes SIGs, and as such, we follow their meeting guidelines, which can be summarized as please be excellent to each other. And if you'd like to talk, please raise your hand and I will call on you. All right, let me see what's going on in chat here. Thank you, Bridget, for linking the agenda doc. I would invite everyone to add themselves to the attending list if they feel so inclined. It helps us as a SIG to kind of know how well these meetings are attended and everything. All righty. So before we get into the regular agenda, I will give a little time here for sub projects to give updates. I don't know. I saw Jesse here, so I know we have some Crow folks on the line. I don't know if there's any updates people would like to give, but yeah, open the floor up.
I'm here. I can briefly say we cut a patch release for Crow. We've been doing a lot of kind of design work and a lot of one-off chats. So we landed a significant CREP, which is the Crow enhancement um, proposal, coined from Capia. So that landed as a proposal. That should unblock some collaborative work on that, which is great. And yeah, we cut 0.9.3, which has kind of some good bug fixes in it, and some minor stuff. So we're looking to now, I think the next meeting we'll be talking meaningfully about 0.10 and what's going into that scope. Um, and we've been talking more about like what a 1.0 looks like. Um, Now that we've had a pretty good understanding of like roadmap, and we actually put it into a little website. So if you go to crow.run, you can actually see the milestones that we predict are part of 1.0. So as always, open to community feedback, and it's good for us to know what's important to people using this stuff. Yeah, there's a little roadmap. See, pretty. So yeah, that gives you an idea of like what we're working on, and what we think is coming in the next couple of releases. So
Yeah,
um,
that roadmap is really pretty. Thank you, Jesse. I'm gonna start now. I've got like this collection of links that I always like whenever I'm talking with one project and I want to show a cool thing another project has done that I think is a really good
oh,
design
cool.
pattern. I'm gonna be like, okay, have you seen Crow's roadmap? Because it looks really beautiful.
Oh, flattered. Thank you. That's all I mean. He did that in an afternoon. It was really good.
Cool. And
Thanks.
thank you for linking that in there. Yeah, no, that looks great. But I love to see projects that do stuff like this because it's really cool. Anyways, thank you.
Sure. Thanks.
All right, cool. I don't think we have any other project maintainers here, but yeah. Are there any other sub projects that want to give updates? Okay, let's move into our agenda then. First topic, Daniel, you've got a topic about Crow for multi-cluster fleet operations. So please take it away.
Yes. Um, so the kind of the preamble for this is that we've got our all the pieces for the demo for KubeCon Salt Lake pretty much in place. The Headlamp team has finished the review of the Crow plugin, and they're just waiting for the Crow team to kind of know their alignment before it gets merged. So that is kind of pretty much in autopilot. So it should take maybe like a few days or maybe a week. So that will be very much in place for the talk, which is basically using the features that are available today. So let me just stop there, and Bridget has a question before I go any further.
Yeah, when you say waiting for the Crow team to approve, I went over and I looked at the PR and it looked like it was waiting for maybe a workflow to be approved for the Headlamp team to run it. So I'm just I want to get clarity since we have Jesse and others here as well. What exactly is needed from the Crow team to get
Uh,
that Headlamp plugin merged?
just to show alignment. So when I spoke with the Headlamp team last week, I just said, hey, before you approve it, because this is very much the cross team's baby, indirectly or directly, it would be good for them to kind of bless it. And so they're just waiting for some type of note or comment in the PR saying from the Crow team saying, yes, we know that this exists, we're happy with it, and we endorse it.
And just to underline that, that's I took the AI for that. I will post later. I mean, this is great. This is great work, Daniel. Just another public venue to say it. This is awesome. And I do think there's a good call out here for our project in that you're leveraging what are effectively private APIs, which you don't have another way to build what you built. So I think the question for us is like, should we make these a little stricter? Do we need to think about a contract for those otherwise undocumented private APIs to become more public APIs and more specified? So really good work here. And that's an AI for me.
But essentially, that means that we're pretty much unblocked for the tech talk to use the visuals, and then we can just focus on the story. But having been basically now that the talk is an autopilot, then the next natural question was, okay, the theme is basically portability, right? Of Crow. So what is the North Star? And so Jesse and I have been talking about the idea of multi-cluster, of just like Crow within the scope of a cluster is a single RGD for a cluster, but what if you had a single RGD for an entire fleet of clusters? What could that look like? And Jesse and his team has done some really good work with the concept of aggregates. I went about it I put together a little prototype, went about it in a slightly different way, just purely using Kubernetes primitives. So nothing new under the sun, but just leveraging what's in there, kind of as a POC. But what we wanted to do, and Jesse and I met on offline on Monday and said, hey, we should really now bring this up to Bridget, Miko, and Walter and say, hey, does this look like a good North Star, or did we go down a rabbit hole that nobody's going to support? So what I thought I would do is maybe just give you suspend our disbelief in terms of the implementation, step back and showed you what it could look like, the product view of what it could look like, and say, is this a good North Star? And if it is, then the rest is just working backwards implementation. And on the other hand, if the North Star says, no, this is not where we're going, then we know that we just need to kind of pivot and think of something else. So would it be okay if I share my screen and I showed you like an interactive mock-up of what potentially Crow could look like a multi-cluster? And I don't know if Jesse, you want to chime in before I do, or if you want to if I miss something, Jesse.
No, I think you got it. I do have a doc I'm working on, so like I think if this vision looks interesting, I think I have something to share that's something for us to review and we can kind of asynchronously align on.
I have just shared to Daniel and Jesse to be co-hosts so that they are able to share screen as desired.
Cool. So this is an interactive mockup that I just vibe coded using Gemini Studio, but it just gives you the flavor of what we're talking about. So the principle is, imagine if you, instead of doing kubectl apply to one cluster, you did kubectl apply to an entire fleet, and that the replicas or the instances of the RGD landed where it needed to land it across your fleet. So what would that look like? So, well, you would want to be able to see, what are the clusters in your fleet? Just a global view of all of your Kubernetes clusters. And this could be on-prem clusters. This could be private clusters that you just built yourself on the cloud or on top of VMs. This could be managed clusters like OKE or GKE or what have you. All of these could be put together as one fleet. And that by itself, even if you just stop there, has tremendous advantages, because many companies want to manage their own clusters, but also, especially with AI and the need for capacity, there are certain providers that will only give you certain features if you use the managed versions of the provide of the GKEs and the EKSs of the world. And so the reality is that if you were able to manage your fleet, your clusters as a fleet, you just unblock many use cases, access to GPUs, make your life easier when it comes to upgrading clusters, taking advantage of spot capacity, et cetera, et cetera. So this is just an overall view of what just, even without Crow, what a like a multi-cluster type of situation would be. And the reality is that this is probably nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun here. There might be some abstraction layers on top of Kubernetes that do this. But what we're talking about here, maybe the novelty here would be, what if this were Kubernetes primitives? So we're not talking about doing something like Argo CD that is close but slightly separate. This is, what if this were Kubernetes primitives, right? Why arbitrarily draw the line at the cluster and not just expand the boundary to like a global view of Kubernetes? And so now if we think of this as, if we think of a fleet as the infrastructure side of things, what will be the flip side of that coin? What will be the application side? What could Crow look like when you are looking at your fleet, of your clusters as a fleet and not as single scope units? Well, imagine that here you have two RGD definitions, one for a deep learning pipeline, another one for a web service. And you can, each one has its own graph with its own sub resources. And so let's say that I want to deploy a deep learning pipeline to my fleet. And so imagine that, again, we could do it through the terminal kubectl apply, but imagine that the Kubernetes was smart enough to say, hey, if you just need 10 GPU accelerators, you can land it on a single cluster. But if you need 100, we're going to have to land you on 2 clusters in order to provide this capability. Or if we need 200, now we need 3 clusters. But just like with Kubernetes today, based on labels and based on the replicas, it knows where to land, in which nodes to land you. This is just a natural idea, but now across multiple clusters. Now, let's say that, for instance, you just have a couple of GPUs that you need, but let's say that you need to abide by some type of data locality regulation, and it needs to basically live in the UK. Again, this would be smart enough to say, okay, this needs to land not just on any cluster, but something that is located in the UK. Similar, if it is in the US, it would know that it needs to land on a US region. And if on top of having to be on the US, if it has to abide by something like FedRAMP, it has to be in the US, but also in a FedRAMP compliant region. So this is just an example of how you can, the benefits of being able to govern, of being able to manage your clusters as a fleet, and abstracting all of this intelligence away from the product teams, and be able to have a platform that basically intelligently knows where to land these resources. And so let's say that if I wanted to just deploy this is just a mock-up, so it really doesn't do anything. But then what happens is that, imagine that you're able to go to see your APIs, your instances of your RGD graphs, and now you're able to say, okay, in which clusters do they live? And so now you are multi-cluster, so you get all the benefits of better availability. If you need to upgrade clusters, it becomes much more of a easier or lift. And then it respects governance and locality and what have you. So that's the idea of combining Crow with the idea of multi-cluster. There's a lot of impetus and a lot of ideas and a lot of people thinking about the idea of multi-cluster, what I think that we need to add to that story is the idea, hey, the infrastructure, yeah, multi-cluster is great. One, can we do it natively to Kubernetes instead of a separate project that is adjacent to it? And two, let's make sure that Crow has a story there, because that's what's going to unblock a lot of use cases from product teams. And so, yeah, so Jesse and I were talking about it, and we wanted to bring it up to you. And also the idea that if this is directionally okay, we could even take this a step further and say, hey, what, should we build a .1, a 0.1 version, and even present it and use the maintainer summit to gain alignment on this and get feedback on this, and maybe to garner the Kubernetes community to really maybe deliver on this notion. That's my spiel. Yeah, Bridget.
Awesome. This is really cool. There's a lot here. There's more here than I knew there was, which is fantastic. You did mention the idea of wanting to discuss it with people at Maintainer Summit, and I know that the Maintainer Summit submissions themselves are already done, but ad hoc discussions and birds of a feather sessions and that sort of thing, totally possible. So I think I had a side conversation with El Mico, and for purposes of Maintainer Summit, when one is not a Kubernetes org member yet, your SIG chairs can submit for that. So I'm not too worried about that. But in terms of getting it into discussion, I think it would be great to show it to people. But I feel like there's so many different topics here that I want to make sure that they get enough airtime. So I will turn it over to Walter.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna be the downer voice. So one, before I'm the downer, this is awesome. I love it. I totally think you should do it. Having said that, the SIG needs to be a little careful. You have gone squarely out of SIG Cloud Provider, and you are now going, hey, this is multi-cluster. You're even saying it here. And I'm just going to say that, as a SIG, I kind of have to, sorry, let me get the right URL. But as a SIG, we're not the SIG for multi-cluster. SIG multi-cluster is the SIG for multi-cluster. And so the first thing I'm going to say is, before we going, we don't need SIG multi-cluster anymore, we have this headlamp thing in Crow, we should go talk with them. Just, I don't know if you already have, Daniel, but I just, as one of the SIG leads, I do need to point that out.
No, and 100%. And I think that, and this is where we wanted to bring it up to you, because the reality is that this is probably even just more than just one SIG, because if like the way actually that I conceived it, it was actually using multi-cluster. There are different ways to probably do this, but say that we went down that way. That's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is, okay, now you have the infrastructure. Now Crow has to operate with this infrastructure. So at the very least, it will be minimum 2 SIGs. It will be probably SIG multi-cluster and SIG Cloud Provider working together to deliver on this. Likely there may be even more than one SIG. This is why it's a big topic. And it will require probably a lot of alignment and political will and capital to get it done. But no, 100%, yeah.
Oh, 100%. And having things cover multiple SIGs is fine. But I mean, two things I'm trying to get at is, if I look at SIG multi-cluster's charter, it's responsible for designing, discussing, implementing, and maintaining APIs, tools, and documentation related to multi-cluster administration and application management. That's literally from their CNCF charter. Yeah. And you're calling this multi-cluster, and I just want us to meet with them before they start getting this weird idea that we're coming at them guns blazing. I mean, one of the things I will say, and Jesse and Bridget can kind of back me up on this one, is Crow has, since its inception, been we're providing a mechanism, we're working with the community, and we're not aiming for anyone else. And I don't think we want to change that within Crow or within SIG Cloud Provider. Like, our SIG is about getting people who might have reason to be contentious to work together for a common good. And I just want to reinforce that lesson. Like, that's our goal, is to work with others and make everyone get along.
No one's going to disagree with that. Like Daniel and I, least of all. So just to be clear, and we probably glossed over this too much, this is a demonstration of multiple concepts coming together for the SIG. What is interesting is the integration of the underlying cloud infrastructure awareness through the abstractions that Crow provides. Squarely outside of the scope of anything SIG multi-cluster has been interested in discussing, at least with me in the past. So that's one bit. The other bit is there's no proposal here to expand the scope of Crow itself. So when Daniel was talking about maybe like an O.1 project, it is an unrelated project to Crow. I mean, related, but not like a sub-project of or a Crow branded thing. Just to be clear.
No, that's fine. And I want to turn it over to El Miko. And but let me be clear. I think this is awesome. I love it. I would like to see this move forward.
Oh, sure.
I just want to make sure that before we go doing things like presenting this alternate to cloud provider in a presentation at KubeCon that says it's about doing multi-cluster, that we've talked to SIG multi-cluster.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like historically, the response has been we don't do that. So like this is a merging of the two scopes, which I think, yeah, nobody disagrees with anything you said. I think that is 100%. I think just to reiterate before El Miko takes the mic, the real proposal and the question here is this maybe pushing what we want to talk about at KubeCon into a new direction? Is it too much of a brain melter? Or is this like the right and logical evolution of the concepts that we've been talking about? I think that's something, and we don't have to answer that now, but I think that's kind of the general idea is like.
I mean, this sounds a lot like something I said in our first ever Crow meeting. So I think it's fabulous.
And I took Daniel, did I not say that Monday? Like literally Walter at a whiteboard basically said this is what we want. So yeah, I think we're all aligned. I think the question is like how do we like publicly talk about this so it doesn't confuse people, I think is the primary thing. Yeah.
And I mean, I think that I'm seeing a lot of people trying to build something that looks like this, going, we need a way to run LLMs when, we have, GPU scarcity. So I think this is a great way of showing the power of Crow and Cloud Provider and all the rest of it. I just want to walk the walk.
Let's make sure we hear from El Miko before it goes too long.
No, I mean, like Walter and I have become very practiced at like stealing thoughts from each other's heads and then like presenting them in meetings. This is just common pattern at this point. But no, I agree with what Walter's saying. And in fact, that was kind of where my mind was going. Like having given talks at KubeCon about things like Karmata and multi-cluster, like auto scaling and stuff like that. Yeah, like I want to make sure that we're including SIG multi-cluster. At the same time, I recognize this is kind of like a novel approach to this because, like, if you put enough primitives out there, like Lego pieces, all of a sudden you can build whatever you want to, right? And it's like, okay, well, if you have enough Kubernetes objects out there, and I mean, if you added cluster API to the mix and this kind of thing, you'd have an even extra level of infrastructure awareness that you could be pulling into these things. So I think this is like tremendously exciting, but yeah, like I want to make sure that we're talking with the SIG multi-cluster folks so that we can make sure that, A, we're not stepping on any toes, but B, if there are areas for collaboration that we're leaning into those. Like I couldn't see like, a tool like Karmata, I couldn't see them like redesigning it to kind of like take this into account. That said, I know they included cluster API, so who knows? Maybe there's a future where that becomes a part of some of these multi-cluster tools. Um, then a second comment I had was kind of more around, um, there's a lot going on here and there's a lot to ingest. And I appreciate like kind of the depth of even, what this mock-up can show. Um, I would want to make sure that we don't get too disconnected from like what users are asking for, because we have the ability to provide a lot of data and a lot of information here. And I would want to know like, okay, how does this connect to user stories that people are actually, doing with Crow today? Like, this is why I love the demo that Daniel has kind of come up with for KubeCon, because I think it's a great motivator. It shows something that people are doing. But in terms of like all the information that's needed here, like I'm curious, what are users actually asking for?
Yeah, I just anecdotally, like even just in the last few weeks, just the 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 what I mentioned about like sometimes you need, let's say, extra GPU capacity, right? And companies like the Airbnbs of the world, the Ubers of the world, where we build our own infra and our own control planes on top of Kubernetes. Sometimes when we want to get extra capacity, you can, but now you have to do it through like sometimes through managed um, uh, providers, through managed distributions. And so that the fact that and that kind of just makes what that means is that you have to build this extra instrumentation and abstractions on top of things in order to absorb that. I think what that's one thing. The other part is that the issue of data locality, availability across providers, across zones, some things that we kind of see that almost on a weekly basis, at least in my world. So to me, this resonates. The fact that, hey, um, this is something that it's in Kubernetes. It's a primitive. It's something that is deeply intertwined with natively into Kubernetes, and that unblocks a lot of these use cases in a way that it's also kind of the same between AWS, GCP, CoreWeave, that it is the same to all providers. I think to me that resonates. But to your point, Amico,
Yeah.
we would have to make sure that this is also resonates with the community broadly.
Yeah, no, and I think like the points you're making are really good, and I agree with you that like there are users that kind of want this stuff, but when I look at like this dashboard and I think about the kind of users that I interact with who are doing like, hybrid cloud and multi-cloud kind of stuff, a lot of the users that I interact with are in kind of constrained environments where like in order to deliver a kind of a UI that looks like this or an interface that looks like this to one of those users, there's going to be a lot of work that has to be done in the background to make sure that you're giving them access to the right, resources, that you've got all the quotas set up and everything. Because
Mhm.
I think looking at it in this way, feels very kind of like I've got root, like I can see all the resources. I know what kind of clouds I can get into.
Mhm.
I can
Mhm.
ask for 200 GPUs and I'm not getting an email from my ops people like within seconds of putting that into the form. Like this assumes a lot. And most of the users that I deal with who are doing these kind of things, like a lot of their time is spent in the kind of preparatory phases where they're getting like the company itself to even be ready to say, okay, you can have 3 clouds you can burst into, you can have all these regions, you can have all this hardware, et cetera. So like, I mean, I love what's going on here, but like, I feel like there's gonna be some middle ground where it's like, okay, yeah, there's gonna need to be all this other tooling that like sets up all the RBACs and everything, and I
Oh,
love that it's all built
100%.
on Kubernetes, but yeah, like it's just
But
That
it's a big thing.
I
so
think one of
that's
the things here, and I agree with you, Elmiko, but I think one of the reasons why I think it's good to do this on something like Crow is because it makes this system more malleable. So you can say, I have this restriction that no one else, because I work for Company X and Company X does its thing, and no one else wants this restriction, but I can extend to have, some concept of this is my org, and I got to reflect my org in this, or whatever it happens to be. But you can, I think, I mean, this was the goal when we started building Crow, is I can more easily reflect those changes in the, in the graph. I can append the restrictions into the graph, do those sort of changes so that this stuff can all continue to work, and I can do those sort of customizations. And I know Jesse and I were both trying to say something at once. So Jesse.
That's fine. No, I agree with what you said. I think I think, Miko, you just called out the tangible outcome of the observation I made, which is like there's two tiers here. This is sort of like an application view of a platform engineer's work product. Crow is the thing that enables it. And I think Bridget nailed it. So Bridget said, so bursting into anywhere GPUs exist, or CPUs or databases or whatever. Exactly right. And this doesn't do that. The RGD becomes an API that you have a fleet deployment of. Crow is the underlying thing that enables that, so that you have N environments, N providers, whatever. Your RGD abstracts those N things. And this is where we hit an issue with cluster API versus KRM-based IAC, right? If you're using ACK, KCC, ASO, Crossplane, Terraform for K8s, whatever it is, you're abstracting the APIs and you're working with modular building blocks. And I think that's where there's a friction point there with cluster API, where that's not how it works. It's meant for abstracting cluster creation. Whereas this is more abstracting everything. Like, this doesn't even have to be Kubernetes if you think about it, which is wild. But this could be for like serverless functions across any place. So you can have like Knative running on-prem, or Google functions, or Azure functions, or Lambda, and Kubernetes is just the thing you built it with. Kind of interesting. So I do think this is like, maybe like as a North Star is like really distant, where we need like, but again, I think that the focus of the project in this SIG is that glue under the covers. So I think that as long as we kind of focus there, and then we do maybe decouple this vision as this other thing that could maybe be a broader thing, multi-SIGs, I think we're doing okay, as long as we don't confuse people.
Yeah, no, it makes sense, and I also like the direction this is going. Like, I love the modularity of it, the nature that it kind of highlights Crow as this Lego piece, this Lego toolkit you can do a lot with. I think, like, in talking about this, um, something you just said is really, I think, what I think this demo, the next part of this demo, or like if there were 5 more minutes to what Daniel was showing here, what I think would be really useful, or what would be really helpful, would be like, help me make that connection between what I'm looking at here and the Crow bits. Like, rip apart more of this to show me how Crow is like the substrate that goes through it. Because yeah, that you're muted, by the way, Jesse. So like, I love.
I was violently agreeing with you. Sorry. Yes, 100%. And I think that's the PR that we were talking about before for Headlamp. This isn't that. This is Daniel's like brainstorm on top of that. The Headlamp PR is like the thing that does that. You can visualize an RGD and see exactly what it's doing on a much more granular level.
Yeah. So I think if we can get to the point where we can take this kind of mock-up as the motivator, but then show how it breaks down into the Lego pieces that put it together, like in a quick way, I think that'll make it easier for us to go to the multi-cluster people and talk about this, because it'll be easy to say, well, we had a pile of Lego bricks and we built this multi-cluster castle out of it. But like, you can see how we got there, right? And I think that'll help people that understand to say, okay, yeah, you weren't just coming for us, like, you weren't looking for some sort of multi-cluster solution, but you ended up there because you built enough Lego pieces that it just became obvious that you could do that. I'll hand it over to Daniel.
Yeah, and I think it's actually, it may even be the other way around, that even if we don't do anything, I think the concept of multi-cluster is going to be more solidified and ingrained and tuned in the months and years to come. What I don't know, that I think there's enough momentum there. I think but from this SIG perspective, from Cloud SIG Provider, is how do we align Crow with that initiative? So that there's thought leadership from SIG Cloud Provider to say, hey, there's momentum, there's momentum here for multi-cluster, but this is the value that Crow can add to that story if we work together.
Yeah, and I think that, I like the way that you put it there, and I think that's exactly, that's exactly where we're going here. And this might result in some sort of working group between SIG Cloud Provider and SIG Multicluster and SIG, whoever else needs to be involved. Because yeah, like how do we take this now to the next level and demonstrate this as like a solution or a workflow for people without kind of stepping on the toes of the multi-cluster folks. And I think including them and figuring out how to collaborate with them will probably be the best for us.
Yeah, actually, in the back of my head, that's what I was envisioning, like a working group with the different SIGs as the stakeholders.
Right.
And then just putting together, like, okay, the execution of this of a North Star such as this. The whole thing about the mockup, and this is why I make sure that it was very much mockup like, is that this is just to spark ideas and to spark the imagination of what, once you build all of this Lego puzzle, this is what the impact of all of that is for a company. That's what it enables, rather than to say, hey, let's just take over the world.
Right, right. I think it's probably worthwhile to go demonstrate this for SIG Multicluster, and like I'd be interested in coming to that meeting too or something, just to give support or whatever. But I think it'd be worthwhile to at least go to a SIG Multicluster meeting, share the work you're doing, and just get their impressions and say like, we're looking at this as like kind of a direction, like you said, a North Star, or we're looking at this as kind of like a guiding light for where we think the future of Crow could go, but we don't, we want to share it and get more people involved. So I think that's probably a good next step, is to go there and talk about these ideas with them to see what they have to say.
And then if we do, I will make sure to add those extra 5 minutes you mentioned to say, hey, this is the piece of the puzzle where we can add value to this story with this. This is how Crow could actually do our bit of the work to enable this vision.
Yeah. Well, and I have a feeling like, SIG Multicluster is probably concerned a lot with like the mechanics of like, how you do this kind of multi-cluster operation. How do you do workload assignment across clusters and everything? So we're absolutely getting into this crossover area where it's like, we're really focused a lot on the workloads that we're looking at, but it happens to be an implementation detail that we'd like them to run on 10 different clouds or whatever, so yeah. Yeah, no, I think if you can make that meeting, I think I'll try to make it too.
In case anyone's interested, it's Tuesday, 9:30 a.m. Pacific, every Tuesday. And
Cool.
yeah, I can go ahead and add you guys I can try adding us. If you let me know, Daniel, I'll go ahead and add something to the agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Yeah, I am on PTO next week, but anytime after that, yeah, I can. And by the way, it may be that I might not be the best person to present. I'm happy to join. I'm happy to present. But if El Nico or Jesse might be more of a better, they know exactly what kind of vocabulary to use, and they've got already more of a reputation in the community. I don't have to. I'm just happy to be part of the journey.
No, like I think you're our lead man right now,
Yeah,
Oh, boy.
I'd be happy to help you frame that, but I think that these are your ideas. I mean, and as you said, it's starting to feel like an eventuality, and others have similar ideas, but you've made it tangible, so you should certainly be there. Yeah, we can move it to the following week when you're back. That's fine.
Yeah, just let me know when, Daniel. I'm usually at SIG Multicluster anyway, so I am happy to be there. I'm happy to be the cloud provider rep at that meeting. But to Jesse and Elmiko's point, I think this is your idea, and while we'll back you up, you're the one who should get the credit for this.
Yeah.
That's good.
A much blunter version of what I said. Agreed. I can be the crow guy. You're the this guy. So yeah, totally.
Yeah, so like maybe 11 August, we'll target that 2 weeks from yesterday. We'll target that as like our potential time for Daniel to show this off, and Walter will be there, and it sounds like Jesse will be there, and I'll try to be there too for moral support. Okay. Does anybody else have questions or comments about this topic? Good discussion. We ate up a lot of our time with that.
Oh, just that I did hear from Renee that Headlamp should be, pushing that forward in the next couple days. So he is satisfied with everything that Daniel had put on that issue, and so
Cool.
and on that
Awesome.
PR. So we will see progress there.
Cool. Well, good deal. All right. Well, let's move along then, because we only got about 18 minutes left and a couple more topics. So, Daniel, next topic is yours. You had gone to the SIG node meeting. Please share with us what you
Yeah.
determined.
So the other topics are way more prosaic and kind of housekeeping type of thing. But you had asked me to go to SIG Provider to ask them about the using these prefixes, something that ends with .kubernetes.io, and what was their feedback on that. And and Miko, you said, hey, let's bring back their answer to this SIG so that you can discuss it amongst yourselves. And essentially, the answer is verbatim what I put there. That the challenge is with allowing this restriction is that they don't know who's relying on this check or on this restriction if we start allowing this prefix. And they were wondering is that why exactly does it have to be this specific prefix vis-a-vis Kubernetes.io as opposed to something like Kubernetes.azure.com? Like what is the underlying need for this specific prefix as opposed to some other prefix that might be new and might not have create friction with any other existing workloads?
Well, as I recall, the issue that Serge had originally brought up, a lot of this is around this activity, this KEP that Serge is proposing to have like a way to signify node ownership and a way to signify features for nodes that are joining the cluster that might not be part of the cloud controller. So like, one of the things, I think one of the motivating cases that Serge had talked about was like, imagine you have a cluster that's mostly on cloud provider A, and then you want to add a couple custom nodes that live like in your own on-premises infrastructure to that cluster. And you figure out all the networking problems, but now you've got these nodes there that like, you want to be able to like label them differently. And maybe what you'd like to do is you'd like to have some sort of specialized cloud controller manager running inside of your on-prem stuff to automate, this kind of labeling. And that was kind of the direction that he was going in for this stuff. And I think that's why he was proposing like, okay, could there be another way to kind of change these feature labels and whatnot? Um, I I think at this point though, like I think the reason he wanted to piggyback on this was so that those other things that are looking for this label would be able to like just pick up the changes without any sort of modification. But it seems like what Signode is saying is that if we want to do things to change that, we should maybe look at a new label, which probably complicates things, but and may not actually solve Serge's problem. I have a feeling we'll have to have a back and forth with this on Serge again to see like what he actually needs here. But thank you for going there and kind of asking these questions and bringing it back. I think this is helpful.
Yeah, they were open to opportunity to an offline discussion just to kind of understand exactly the reason for this ask but yeah, the main thing is like we don't know who's using this. So if we were to remove this restriction or just change it, we don't know what else could break.
Yeah.
So I'm only about 80% sure of what I'm about to say because it goes back a long way. But my memory of why we have this restriction is not because we thought it would break anything. It's because the SIG didn't want to give individual cloud providers the ability to assign Kubernetes labels, right? I believe this is a philosophical check where we're basically saying Azure, Google, et al. Are not allowed to come in and say, here is a standard part of Kubernetes that is, got the official Kubernetes, label prefix and is now part of standard Kubernetes. And so we were trying to say, if that's going to happen, it needs to go through a SIG, which is what we're doing here. So I think it should be okay. But it was specifically about saying the SIG has to look at it and say that this is a general Kubernetes feature, not a Google feature. And therefore, we as a SIG and as a community are okay adding it because we don't think this is providing preferential treatment to one cloud provider. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me. Like, and maybe now maybe the SIG re-examining at this point, if we decide we want to make a decision to change those, that we control, that we're doing the right thing. We're having a SIG meeting about it. We'll presumably generate a cap.
But I would say that we shouldn't, because whoever was presenting the code, can you bring that code snippet back up? And I just want to I'm sorry, Bridget. Like, I think saying, look, if you're adding a general label, we should keep the restriction here. We should say, look, this specific label has been approved, go for it. But I think the general restriction that is being implemented here, where we're saying, look, generally adding labels we haven't approved is not okay, but here's the approved list. And if it's on the approved list, go ahead. And I think, in my opinion, that is the right way of changing this. Bridget?
Yeah, I agree with everything Walter just said. And I also want to make sure that we're very clear that the Kubernetes upstream project, we should not be trying to name anything whatever.azure.com or .amazon or .google, just because that it kind of strikes a dissonant note to have the upstream project putting things in a namespace that could confuse people and make them think these things are coming from a corporate entity as opposed to these things are coming from upstream Kubernetes. And I realize a bunch of us are employed by said entities, but it still muddies the waters far too much. And also, to Walter's point, sets up like a privileged tier or endorsements or something that we are not in the business of doing that. So I think it's pretty important for us to maintain our neutrality and not label things in such a way that it implies that the upstream project is specifically doing only things for these providers. I feel like that's very messy and I would not go that direction.
Okay. So I think like probably, and I closed this after Serge was kind of reassessing some of this stuff. So I think like probably we should go back to the cap that Serge is working on and look there and see like what needs to be done. Yeah. Okay. Well, I appreciate the discussion, and I'll try to follow up with Serge and just see what's going on the cap, I guess. Okay. Anyone else have questions or comments about that topic? Alrighty. The last one, Daniel, this is about the issues we are opening. So please take it away.
Yeah, so there were these issues that Amika, you asked me to create, particular the one with GCP and Azure. I think the AWS one was already created, but there was an understanding that the same issue with the API changes that would essentially makes it so that you won't be able to compile. Were also present in GCP and Azure. So Um, oops, maybe I put the wrong links. I put the wrong links there. Sorry about that. But essentially, the issues were created, and the code is. I have some prepared branches for that, where I was able to, in isolation, bump the version locally, test it, make sure it works. But obviously, and I guess this is the right thing to do, but I'm not 100% sure. I haven't deployed or submitted the PR because I understand that the version first has to be bumped up, and then I can land the PRs. So I did it as much as I could by mocking the bump locally, but the issues are but the fixes have not landed yet. And I just wanted to bring that up in case you needed me to do something different, or perhaps I misunderstood something and I'm supposed to land it ASAP.
No. I mean, this is exactly, I mean, in my mind, this is exactly what we wanted, was we wanted the projects to know these are coming up. As for the next part of it, that's where it gets a little more complicated, right? Because like, for example, like I don't know if Azure probably has a PR up to start bumping, or they will soon. I think Dependabot might be doing it. So you'll have to like coordinate with the projects to say, okay, when are they when are they going to do their bump? Yeah, like you said, they're still on 36 here, and that's
And
pretty low.
you're out next week, Daniel. So I think you'll be coming back and have time to deal with it before the release, certainly, which is the last week in August. But
Yeah. But at this point, yeah, like we have to wait for these bumps to happen. Now, this is where we get into kind of the open source ethos side of it, right? Like, if you wanted to, you could reach out to those communities and ask them what how they do their bumps and everything. And if you could maybe propose the bump to you know, the dependencies as well. But I haven't been following, like I know both these projects, GCP and Azure, are quite active. Like there's a lot of PRs that
Mhm.
go through them. There's a lot of, dependency management that goes on there. So like I would want to reach out to the people who are currently doing the maintenance on it and say like, hey, like when is the bump coming? Can I help with the bump? Those kind of things. So if you want to take it to the next step, that would be kind of the next step, would be like proposing some of these dependency bumps. But I haven't been following them closely on these projects, so I'd want to sync up with their cadence to make sure that you're not like, you're not just coming in out of nowhere with some dependency bump or whatever.
No, agree. So maybe in terms of AIs, I'll just sync with you, Almiko, offline, and then um, just double check on how to engage with those teams.
Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, like I think to start with, I think both Azure and GCP have provider channels, so I would probably start there. But yeah,
Okay.
feel free to ping me, and I'm happy to help however I can.
yeah, the provider channel on Kubernetes Slack is one that I know that my colleagues who work on this, who I believe are mostly based in Australia. So time zone wise, they're not really online during this meeting ever, but they are happy to answer for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I've found both the communities to be pretty good to work with. So yeah, for what it's worth. Okay. Um, if there's no other questions on that, we got about 5 minutes left. We'll just check the open triage issues quickly here. And I think we're still working to get the test infrastructure back up. Okay, we know this one from Pepe Lota and good Tim's old issue from 2019. All right, I think we're good on the issues here. I will notice, since like uh, I was talking to Patrick Oley about this, and I think we're going to need to figure out our testing situation in the future here. We keep getting pinged about stuff, but I don't know if this PR has gone through yet. I'll just um, note that I think the GCP cloud tests have been pulled too. So like, do we even have cloud here anymore? Yeah, it's like we don't even have a cloud folder here anymore. It appears that they've removed everything. from there. So, yeah, like the GCP tests that we're running are not running anymore unless one of these things have been moved. So yeah, Patrick reached out to me saying like, okay, are we like not testing this at all? And it's like, well, testing is happening from the cloud provider directories, but I think coming back up with some common, you know, testing, I think we should probably figure that out. Anyways, I just wanted to bring it up because Patrick had been pinging me about it, and I don't think we have like any cloud provider specific tests running in here anymore. So, anyways, something to keep working on. All right. I guess that brings us kind of to the end. Does anybody have questions or comments before we go here? All right. Well, thanks for coming out, everybody, and I guess we'll see you in a couple weeks.
See ya.
Later.
Well.